two levels of difference between religion. And the first thing to recognize, ladies and gentlemen, as you go around the world, study all religions or none, people of any faith, philosophy you care to name, you'll find a striking fact. And it's that there's a common element of morality that's shared by almost every living human being. I've done a bit of research on this. And you will find the golden rule, do unto others as you would be done by, in every single religion, in every single philosophy, even Roman pagan philosophy, and in the fundamental statement of British humanism. You will find it everywhere. What does that tell me? It tells me that we need to respect each other's ethical code. Sometimes as a Christian, I can be put to shame by the moral integrity of someone of another religion. And therefore we approach this with great sensitivity. So that's the first thing. But what I notice is this, ladies and gentlemen, that the real difference comes not at the level of ethics and morality, so much as at the level of the basis on which a person can have a relationship with God. And there, religions and philosophies divide into two systems. One of the systems is a bit like Harvard University. There is an entrance examination. I presume you have an entrance, do you? Or do you just get in without an exam? No. So there's an entrance exam, so we can imagine that as a door here. And then there's the Harvard way, and it goes up and down, and you try and stay on it, and there are all the professors to teach you. And then there's a whacking great gate at the end. It's called final exams. Now, the whole principle on which the system depends is that of merit. The professors, all of them, are infinitely kind. And, but, I hope they are anyway. But they cannot guarantee that you're going to get through the door at the end. And it depends on merit, your performance, your achievement. And many religions are like that, and their adherents tell me they're like that. There's some initiation rite, you get on the way, you try to follow the way, and you hope that then when the great assessment comes, and your good deeds are measured against your bad deeds, that somehow the good ones will weigh more than the bad ones, and you will be accepted into whatever is beyond. I know that's a slight caricature, but it's what many people believe. It's what many Christians actually believe. I do not believe that at all. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the unique thing, it seems to me, about Christian faith is it's not based on merit. Because it does have a gate and a way. But at the beginning, there stands Jesus Christ, who claims to have come into the world to die for my sin. Now, that's a very ugly word to raise in Harvard, but you did ask me about religions, so I'll have to give you the answer that I believe is the truth. In other words, let me put it this way. Suppose I did my first day at Cambridge, I saw a beautiful girl. I married her eventually. I suppose I went to her and said, Sally, do you know, I'd like to marry you, but here's a cookbook. Now, it's got a whole lot of rules inside it. Now, if you keep those rules fairly well, for the next 30 or 40 years, I will think about accepting you. Of course, I couldn't possibly accept you now. But if you perform well enough, when the final assessment comes, I will accept you. Well, some of you are laughing. Others of you might be experiencing that, I don't know. But you see, that would be to insult her. The secret of my marriage, ladies and gentlemen, is this: that we accepted each other at the beginning, unconditionally. And because she doesn't have to keep the rules of the cookbook, so to speak, in order to gain my acceptance, that sets her free to learn her country. And it's exactly the same with God. We wouldn't dream of basing our relationship with a fellow human being on a measured performance and an acceptance at the end of a long history of performing laws. And yet millions of people think that that's a way to base a relationship with God. And it seems to me here, and let me say it straight, Christianity competes with no other religion here. Because as far as I can see, Christ is the only person that offers me the knowledge of forgiveness right here and now. So in my life, I try to live for him, not in order to gain his acceptance, but because, ladies and gentlemen, I already have it. It's not based on my performance or my merit. It's based on the merit of Jesus Christ, who died and rose for me.
Gautama Buddha was born a Hindu, and he renounced two of the fundamental doctrines of Hinduism, the authority of the Vedas and the caste system. He could not accept those two, went on his own journey in search of enlightenment, and came, of course, with the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path and the ultimate extinguishing of desire in his nirvanic pursuit. So he turned his belief away from the religion of his birth in order to find a different answer. Islam is also exclusivistic in its claim, in all of its precepts and its 5 pillars and so on. What about these contradistinctions? The first thing we need to know is there are distinctions, there are fundamental differences. At best, there are superficial similarities. I often hear the question posed wrongly. They'll say, aren't all religions fundamentally the same and superficially different? No, they are fundamentally different, and at best they are superficially similar. What are the fundamental claims, for example? In Buddhism, the goal is to extinguish hunger, extinguish desire. I remember talking to the first woman monk who was from Thailand to be ordained into the Buddhist priesthood. But Thai Buddhists do not ordain women, so she went to Sri Lanka to be ordained, and she has a Ph.D. in philosophy from McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, and Waterloo, I guess, Ontario, McMaster University there. Got her Ph.D. in philosophy, and she gave me the first interview. We chatted for well over an hour, one-on-one, and I sort of angled into some questions because I didn't want to be too discourteous. And one of the things I said to her is, I hear you're married. And she said, yes. I said, you have children? She said, yes. I said, but you're living in a temple by yourself? She said, yes. I said, do you not see your children? She started crying. She said, I have a car. I said, you have a car? She said, yeah. I said, okay. So she drove herself because she can't allow a man to drive her, she said, so she has to drive herself. And she says, every evening at the end of the day, I try and meet up with one of my children. She said, this is the hardest part of my life. I said, so you are on the journey to extinguishing the desire to be with your children. Is that right? Is that a fair assessment? She kept quiet. And then I said this. I said, the Dalai Lama has as his primary pursuit now the freedom of Tibet. She said, that's right. I said, why does he desire that? She looked at me and she said, we try not to get into these philosophical questions. Let's just say that he chooses to. You take a look at other world religions and see where these 4 questions are dealt with: origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. These 4 questions have to be answered in 2 ways. Follow me, please. Every particular answer has to correspond to truth, either through empirical form of measurement or through the logical reasoning process. And when those 4 answers are put together, they must cohere and not be incoherent. So the 2 tests, correspondence and coherence, I guarantee you, only in the Judeo-Christian worldview will you find these 4 questions answered with corresponding truthfulness and with the coherence of a worldview. Let me take just one example, and I don't say this to slight, but this is a fact and we have to deal with it. I've been invited in many Islamic countries, and I have open forums there and going to go to one of the toughest Islamic countries within the next few weeks. They've hosted me in many parts there, and we've had dialogues. I want to give to you two things. In the Quran, it is the only historically claimed document that denies that Jesus Christ was actually crucified or died on the cross. Denies that. The Greek historians say he died on the cross. Roman historians say that. Pagan historians say that. Jewish historians say that. And Christian historians say that. The Quran is the only one that says it appeared to him that he died, but he didn't actually die on the cross. So historically, it is making an affirmation that is really historically untrue. I got into a discussion with Sheikh Hussein of the leading Shiite cleric in Damascus, Syria, a real gentleman. For over 3 hours, we talked with an interpreter between us and an audience listening in. I was allowed to ask him one question about his faith, and he was allowed to ask me one question about mine. There was nothing, no rancor, no adversarial stance, just a perspective and counter-perspective and back and forth. It's the best way to do it, really. At the end of it, Sheikh Hussein looked at me. He was very respectful through the whole time, always referred to me as Professor Zacharias. And then at the end, he looked at me, leaned over, and he said, "You know, Professor, I think the time has come for us in the Islamic world to stop asking if Jesus Christ died and to start asking why." I said to him, "May I quote you on that, sir?" He said, "Yes, you may. I'm hopefully going to go there before long, and I hope we can meet up again." Origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. The Judeo-Christian worldview is not the only one that claims exclusivity, but it's the only one that takes those 4 questions with corresponding answers that are truthful and coherent answers that stand the test of time. And the ultimate answer of the resurrection from the dead that gives you hope. And
roads lead to God. This is a big question because we're aware of people around us with very different belief systems, and to say that your unique road leads to God seems kind of exclusivistic today, and some would even say arrogant. But let's think about this for a second. Do all roads lead to God? Well, the question is, what's a road? A road is a path that you get from A to B. But as we start to look at different religions, guess what we find? The path that people say we are on and how we get to salvation is very different. Well, let's take a step back and think about something for a minute. It's not just Christians who say their path is correct. Muslims believe their path is correct. Jews believe their path is correct. Atheists believe their path is correct. Now, of course, they don't believe there's a God at the end, but they think they're right and everybody else is wrong. To Muslims, you have to follow the 5 pillars. You have to work and do certain things to earn God's favor and earn your salvation. Christians say it's by grace. Buddhists say it's through a process of enlightenment, by getting rid and purging yourself of your desires. So when we start to look at the different religions, we realize that the path they even say we're on is radically different. But then we say to God, the question is, what do different religions mean by God? Well, Christians say there's one God who's triune, 3 persons. Muslims say there's one God, Allah. Hindus say there's 330 million gods. In fact, some versions of Buddhism would say that there is no God. It's actually more atheistic. Atheists say the path is we are all headed to destruction at the end. There's no afterlife, there's no soul, there's no God. So when we stop and we think about the idea that all roads lead to God, it's kind of incoherent when we break it down. All religions say we're on different paths, and they all say we're even headed to different destinations. So clearly all roads don't lead to God in that sense. So the question is there a path that leads to God in the end? Well, here's something to keep in mind. I think Jesus is the only way to get to God because Jesus is the only one who fixed the problem. You see, the problem is sin. We've broken an objective moral law. God is a holy, perfect, righteous being. And since we are sinful, we are separated from Him. And the problem is sin, so the question is, who fixed the problem of sin? Look, if your car breaks down and you're out of gas. Doesn't do any good to get new spark plugs. Doesn't do any good to change the tires. Doesn't do any good to fix the carburetor. You have to identify the problem and fix it accordingly. In this case, the problem is it's out of gas. Give it more gas. Well, the reason Jesus is the only way is because Jesus is the only one who fixed the problem of sin. So everybody claims that their way is right to get to God. Jesus, who lived a sinless life, who did miracles, gave some of the greatest moral teachings, claimed to be the only way to get to God because he is the only one who fixed the problem.